But now we have to move on to another story, which it's from Glenn Greenwald from The Intercept. Please check it out. The show notes are in the link in the description box below. But non-voters, this is important. Non-voters are not privileged. They are disproportionately lower income, non-white, disenfranchised with the two parties. So again, starting off, again, there's a lot into this article, but I'll just be introducing the intro paragraph. Let's look at it right here. Not even 24 hours have elapsed since Bernie Sanders announced that he was suspending his presidential run, and already a shaming campaign has been launched against those who were contemplating abstaining from voting due to disaffection with the two major party candidates. The premise invoked for this tactic is that only those who are sufficiently privileged have the luxury of choosing not to vote, meaning that non-voters are rich and white and thus largely immune from the harmful consequences of a Trump presidency, which largely fall on the backs of poor and non-white Americans. This tactic rests on a caricature. It is designed to suggest that only people who make a deliberate and conscious choice not to vote due to disaffection are white trust fund lefties whose wealth status and privilege immunize them from the consequences of abstention. By contrast, this "you must vote" campaign insists those who lack such luxuries, poor voters, and racial and ethnic minorities understand that voting is imperative. This assertion about the identity and the motives of non-voters is critical, not only to try to bully and coerce people into voting by associating non-voting with rich white privilege, but also to suppress any recognition of how widespread the disaffection is for both parties and the political system generally among poor and non-white citizens. But the problem with this claim is a rather significant one. It is based on the outright demonstrable falsehood that those who choose not to vote are primarily rich, white, and thus privileged, while those who lack those privileges, voters of color and poor voters, are unwilling to abstain. And again, the article goes into further data in regards to how there are a lot of poor and working class families that right now can't vote because, again, voting is not a national holiday. The access to vote, getting the proper requirements to legally vote in whatever said state are becoming difficult. And these are in Democratic and Republican states because the establishment chooses to make the rules and then gerrymander certain districts. And so there's a lot to add into this. So when you hear this about non-voters, especially, there's probably people out there who would like to vote, but they just don't have the time. Or also there's plenty of people that are really sick and tired of the two-party political system. Way back when we were on the radio, right after the 2016 election, I kept on repeating this one quote right now that 40% of Americans were identifying themselves as independents. That number is now rising up because very few Americans are identifying themselves either as Republicans or as Democrats. More Americans want there to be a multi-party parliamentary system, and we're not getting in that kind of representation. We're still stuck with the Democrats and Republicans. And at the end of the day, more and more people, and especially with this, relief package that was given to us, we're all starting to see that the Democrats and Republicans in the political establishment only care about the top 1%. They don't care about us, and they never will. And so when you have people not voting, one, people are tired of the system, and two, there's people that are just too poor or don't have the time to actually vote. And what makes you think, especially now as the Democrats and I have Biden, what makes them think there's going to be a massive turnout after this crisis? I mean, one thing that's crossing a lot of people's minds is how am I going to provide for my families? Going into the general election, there's a good possibility that no one's going to really give a damn. And that's the truth. Dan, Jerome, take it away.
No, you go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I think that this is exactly, it's just more of the same. It's more of what we've always been dealing with. I mean, I feel like what can I add to it?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit in here that says the Pew data on this issue is stark. Almost half of non-voters in the 2016 presidential election were non-white, even though they compose only 1/4 of the voting population. Even more extreme is the data on class. More than half of non-voters, 56%, are quite poor, making less than $30,000, even though that income group constitutes just over 1/4 of the voting population. The people who choose to vote are disproportionately privileged. Those who are non-privileged choose disproportionately not to vote. Again, it's just, I mean, you kind of said it succinctly, Kit. So it's,
yeah. I guess maybe I'll just add to it that, and of course, none of this doesn't matter. CNN, MSN, who are given gravitas as credible news organizations, which is hysterical, are still going to blame white college educated people pretending that that's Bernie's base, pretending that it's not diverse, pretending they literally manufacture reality into existence. So the news is going to say it's a privilege, the privileged to do not vote, when in reality it's the privileged that do, and they are the ones that have designed this system.
Absolutely. And Daniel, I mean, again, because we've talked about this even in the earlier story too, about voter shaming and how the system doesn't care. And, you know, what more we can add to this is that there are more people that think like you do than you realize. That there are more people who hate the Democratic and Republican parties just as much as you do. I think right now the real solution is organizing and planning and trying to bring in that better future, because you will not get your rights acknowledged by the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or no matter who the president is at this point. The system works for the top 1%. And right now we're seeing it work for the top 1%. How's that bailout money working out for you guys? We're still waiting.
Yeah, what bailout money?
Yeah, exactly.